Hello and welcome to the ALCTS webinar, When Opportunity Knocks, Challenges Associated with Implementing Linked Data in Libraries. I'm Carrie Cassio, Chair of the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee. Our presenter today is Heather Moulaison. Heather is an assistant professor at the University of Missouri's School of Information Science and Learning Technologies, also my alma mater. Her teaching and research interests include organization of information, including cataloging and metadata, and emerging technologies in libraries, including linked data and cloud computing. Heather will look at the obstacles and opportunities that linked data structures and the semantic web can bring to library data. If you have questions for Heather, please type them into the question box on your screen. Heather will be taking questions throughout the presentation. She'll be pausing here and there. If we should go over time, Heather will answer any additional questions offline, and all participants will receive the answers by email. Also, please note that today's session will be recorded, and you will receive an email to the recording and slides pretty quickly after the webinar is finished. We don't currently have a chat function in the GoToWebinar software, so if you'd like to talk to other attendees, you can use the Twitter hashtag ALCTSCE to talk further about today's session online. We won't be monitoring the Twitter feed during the presentation. So there might be a slight delay as I now turn the presentation over to Heather.
All right, did it work, Carrie?
Yes, you're good to go.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I'm really excited about talking about linked data, and you know, part of this was when we first considered what a presentation on linked data that might be involve new information, because it seems that a lot of librarians are really excited about linked data, and we all probably have sort of a basic understanding of what linked data is, and you know, maybe some of us more basic than others, but we've all heard the buzzword. So how can we go beyond that in a session? So I want to preface all of this by saying I'm an incredibly optimistic person. And I do not mean to come off at all as being a pessimist, but I do want to look at some of these opportunities from a realistic point of view and face them head on, because some of them actually do represent challenges that I do think we very seriously will have to figure out how to combat in order to make the best use of linked data in our libraries. So I was asked to show you a picture of myself, which is always a little awkward. So I thought I would just get the most recent picture that I had of myself, and this was taken at the University of Missouri commencement on Saturday. So I did graduate from Rutgers, and it's not red, it's scarlet, those robes that I'm in. So I'm the one in the middle there, and I've got a colleague of mine on either side. And there we are in the gym, kind of awkwardly waiting for the commencement exercises to begin. I guess a few things that I want to say. I am familiar with synchronous online teaching. This is something that I do an awful lot. So I will invite you sort of to piggyback on what Carrie was saying about some of the housekeeping things. I will invite you to ask questions frequently and passionately and excitedly, and I want you to understand that I'm used to seeing students who can see each other's chats, but sort of coming at me with a barrage of questions at all times while I'm speaking. And my intention is, if you have sort of short questions, kind of ready reference type questions, if you will, I'll try to answer those really quickly so that we don't get too far away from the slide where your question was located before I can get to it. Otherwise, at the end of each section, and I'll explain how I tend to break down the sections when we get going. At the end of each section, I'll answer your questions as well, if you have bigger, sort of meatier questions that you'd like to ask. And also, as Carrie mentioned, I'm not on Twitter right now. I can go back and look at what you tweet later on, but there are only so many things that I can keep track of at once. So I think that was what I wanted to cover there. So if we could do the first poll, Kiara. I wanted to just sort of get a sense of who my audience is, if you will. So the way the question is worded might be a little bit awkward for some of you to answer, but I didn't want to have too many parts associated with the question, too many options for an answer, so it sort of is what it is. So if you could sort of quickly and I don't know, quick and dirty answer to your comfort level with linked data that is going to give a hint at your background. what my intention was to talk a little bit while you're taking these polls, because I know especially if you're in a room full of people, it may take a few minutes to figure out who's going to type in the answer. So I was just going to go on ahead with this. As I mentioned, I think a lot of folks are pretty familiar with at least the term linked data. We've been hearing such wonderful things, all of these incontestable benefits, right? We're going to be able to make relationships in our metadata explicit. We're going to be able to tie into other data stores. We're going to be able to pull from other resources and push out our data to other venues and projects. We're going to finally be using a web-friendly markup. You know, and then the big one, we're going to be liberating libraries from their data silos, which sounds so grand, right? We're liberating our data finally, and these are all big parts of the appeal. Linked data is that instantiation of the semantic web. The semantic web being the intelligent web, or, you know, let's not split hairs. This is semantic web, intelligent web, Web 3.0. These are all kinds of ways of getting at the same idea that's sort of fantastic and scary and amazing all at once, that we're going to have a system set up where machines are able to talk to each other and where we're going to be able to tap into that. And as a profession, this is incredibly exciting, especially in tech services. So the ALCTS audience, I think, gets really intrigued by this whole idea of linked data. So turning now to the poll, so 7% of folks are new to the idea of linked data, and I think this is about what we thought that it would be. 71% are aware of kind of the broad strokes and with a library science background, and this, so this I'm surprised about. 21% understand the workings sort of from a computer science background, which is not what I was expecting, I'll be honest, but I will hope that you will, those of you who have more of a computer science background will be quick to send questions and point out clarifications and to interact with me using the question box as we go. I really intended to aim this to folks mostly who were in libraries and with a background in library and information science, because that is, in fact, my background. So that was my intention, but so there you go. I'm not sure if you folks can see the poll. Maybe. I thought I would move on, though. So we'll come back to these ideas a lot. If you haven't seen them, you may want to jot them down, and we'll especially come back to them in the beginning, in the first part of the presentation, in the biggest chunk that I have for you. So these are the principles of linked data, and these were set forth by Tim Berners-Lee, who was, of course, the man who invented the World Wide Web. And so these are his ideas. He says the first of these four principles, use URIs as named first things, and we'll get into URIs more in just a minute. Use HTTP URIs so that people can look up those names. So give a web address to names. When somebody looks up a URI, provide useful information using the standards. I hate to say it, I can hear typing from somebody, and I can manage to focus and not listen to it, but it's sort of perfect. I can't hear it anymore. Thank you. So when someone, back to number 3, excuse me, when someone looks up a URI, provide useful information using the standards. So in parentheses, the standards are RDF, which is that model for describing metadata using the subject, predicate, object, triple, and then Sparkle, and that's the query language to get out data from your RDF data store. So that would be the third principle behind linked data. And then the fourth one is to include links to other URIs so that they can discover more things. And yes, that's grammatically incorrect, and it is sort of like nails on a chalkboard, but it's such a powerful idea that we can forgive Tim Berners-Lee just this once. So this whole idea of linking things, which obviously is going to be foundational to something that's called linked data. So do bear these in mind. I will, as I mentioned, be talking again about URIs, and then this whole idea of URIs on the web. We'll also be talking again about RDF and Sparkle. So linked data has been a pretty exciting idea in library land for a while. I was trying to think of when I first started hearing people get excited about linked data, and it was probably back in maybe 2007, 2008. The Library Linked Data Incubator group got together a final report. They've been working on this, I want to say, for about a year, in October of 2011, and it's a really exciting series of reports. And if you want to learn more, I really encourage you to look at these. They're a lot more readable than you would think they might be, especially since they're sponsored by the World Wide Web Consortium. So I just mentioned those principles of linked data, those 4 principles, and if you're familiar with these linked data ideas, you've probably seen those before, and you've probably seen a couple of different definitions. I just thought I would give this one because it had a lot of terms in it I wanted to bring out as well. So we're just laying the foundation here, right? So linked data refers to data published in accordance with principles, so you just saw those principles, designed to facilitate linkages among data sets, element sets, and value vocabularies. So, and the report does a really good job of breaking down what data sets are, element sets, and value vocabularies in a way that those of us from a technical services background can understand pretty readily. So data sets are kind of databases, data stores. We hear them referred to as data stores, full and complete sort of sets of data. So you know, the big example is DBpedias, which is Wikipedia as rendered as linked data, information from the info boxes of Wikipedia encoded as linked data. Freebase is another one, Open Library. There are a whole lot of them that you may have run into, and we can talk more about these as we go. Element sets, these are metadata schemas. These are things like the Dublin Core metadata element set. So these are going to be encoded in a way that makes them RDF friendly, because we already saw that that was one of the principles. And value vocabularies. And again, this is not something that's new to us in tech services, because when we talk about value vocabularies, we're really just plugging in a value into a field. So this could be something as simple as a Library of Congress subject heading, some sort of classification number using Dewey Decimal Classification, for example, putting in the authorized form of a name heading using VOF or the Library of Congress linked version of the authority file that they have. So linked data, it's been presented to us in a way that's really quite approachable, and I think a lot of librarians really appreciate that. This is not something new and scary, just the ideas behind it are so awesome and amazing. So it's to the point where everyone's talking about it, right? And there are lots of people who kind of get on soapboxes and have, for the most part, really wonderful things to say about it. And then we have some folks that we kind of expect are going to not want to jump on the bandwagon right away, and that seems pretty in line with, you know, certain personalities. And you know, and then there's sort of just the average librarian, but we're all talking about it. And so I'm supplying you with this link to a YouTube video. And the way this software works, I'm not able to share this video with you, but it's an extra normal video, you know, one where text was submitted and then the characters sort of, the computerized voices read the text and the characters sort of move along with what they're saying. And so it's 2 characters who are talking about linked data, and it's the one keeps asking questions about uses of linked data in libraries, and the second keeps saying in his computerized voice, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Can linked data be used to bring out sophisticated elements of aboutness? I don't know. Can linked data be used successfully in libraries across the board? I don't know. So you get the idea. It's entertaining. It's entertaining because, I mean, who takes the time to do this? It's something that people are really passionate about. I mean, that's the answer. Skeptics are going to be really vocal and perhaps even a bit snarky, and you know, which makes, I guess, everyone else even more curious about it, right? It's kind of the effect of banning a book. So this video is from 2010. So lots and lots has happened since then, of course. Excuse me, I want to take a drink. And I would say most people, for the most part, right, at this point in time, are pretty darn optimistic. So the future of libraries without linked data, you know, lots of people are increasingly making it sound like it's just not going to happen. We must have linked data or we're in the toilet. I pretty vehemently disagree. See, this is funny. This is where I'd expect my students to freak out and start typing things to me, and I see no one has, and that's all right. My point is, you know, there's got to be some sort of happy medium, though, between we're in the toilet or we're snarking about things using computerized voices. You know, there has to be some systematic way of looking at this, and so that's kind of what I wanted to present to you today. Because we have to, you know, the next question that we ask ourselves is, if linked data is such a great idea, why don't we see it being used in every library that exists? And what do librarians need to start considering when thinking about linked data in their own libraries? So that was my build up to this. That's why that's in sort of that grayish color. I guess the thing that I didn't mention before when I was telling you about me, my degrees from Rutgers, before I came to libraries, I taught French, and I actually taught library science in French in Morocco and in Canada. So I have a love of all things French. So that I tried to organize this according to sort of a roughly the French dissertation model, where first you have the thesis, or really the meat of what it is that you want to get at, and that's what's going to probably be developed, the idea that's going to be developed the most. And then the antithesis, so kind of stating claims sort of to the contrary to see where that gets you, and then a synthesis, taking a look at all of it together and drawing conclusions. So that is what I'm trying to do with this session here. The first big section that I want to go over with you is taking a look at what's wrong sort of technically with linked data. And actually throughout, I'll mention this right now, I really wanted to try to get out of the standard library lit, the standard ALCTS library lit, because I wanted to try to bring you a different perspective. But since so many of you are already outside of that perspective, you might have some other things to contribute as well that I'd be happy to share once you've typed them into the question box. So what's wrong with linked data? I want to talk about some technical obstacles that libraries are going to have to overcome in order to use linked data, at least the way we've envisioned it. As an antithesis to all of that, linked data clearly makes sense. People are using it. We've gone to a lot of trouble to make these linked data vocabularies and to set up data stores. And so where does it make sense? And who's using linked data? And I'm going to introduce some spins on that notion as well, I guess. And then finally, the library systems and linked data. So going back to a specifically very library land looked at linked data projects. Again, trying to keep away from things that I know you're going to read about if you read alerts or cataloging classification quarterly. So a couple of few little projects that didn't come from there. So I tried to color code things. There's a woman at my gym who has gym shoes that are just about this color. So we're going to start with Dayglow Green. What's wrong with linked data? And I thought that was a Moroccan-looking door. I don't know. So here are just some general observations. The person I'm citing here is actually a blogger and is certainly not the only person to identify some general issues with linked data. This blogger in particular identifies 4. I thought 3 were most relevant and sort of interesting to discuss as a way of getting into this topic with you. So the first is a question, the question of identity. So the simple question of what is exactly linked data? It's not easy to answer. So the problem here is that we saw those 4 principles for linked data in the very beginning that Tim Berners-Lee set forth. You know, there is actually some question about how much does in that third principle, how much does RDF, how much is it required and how much is it just a suggestion to have RDF be one of the protocols used for linked data? Is it really necessary or not? What about publishing data? So again, a quote from this blogger, people find linked data hard to learn because of several steps along the way, certain things that are conceptually difficult to grasp. So this is somebody coming at this from a computer science background who's saying that it's difficult to publish linked data because it's conceptually difficult. So that's a little troubling to me, coming from information science and a background in libraries and tech services. And then consuming data is sort of the opposite of that, but the same problem. Finding content in linked open data stores is actually challenging. So these three issues are sort of going to get us in a skeptical mindset. What else? What else might we think about with linked data? So how else might we take apart these four principles? Well, we start off with the whole URIs thing. So to go back to that, URIs, it stands for Uniform Resource Identifier. It's a kind of URL. So HTTP URIs, that was the second principle, these foundational standards. And these are the nouns, and in some cases the verbs, if it's an element set that's using a namespace, used in RDF triples, and this forms the basis for the semantics in the semantic web that linked data is the instantiation of, is encoding. And so URIs identify real-world objects. And if you skip down real-world objects, people in cars, even ideas, non-existent things like a unicorn, these are all real-world objects. Whereas web documents are non-information resources. So it's pretty easy and obvious, I think, for us to conceive of the idea that web documents have a URL. They're on the web, and there it is. There may be copies of that document at different URLs, but just go with me. Let's simplify for a moment. Your web document is at a certain URL, and that would be the URI that we would use for it. Whereas a real-world object, it's artificial to create a URI for a real-world object because a real-world object exists apart from the web. So having a URI for people and cars and unicorns, it depends on who you are. I mean, if you studied classification schemes at all, you're going to know that people are going to attack things from different ways, and people are going to build a database and create a URI for people, and then somebody else might build another database and create another URI for the same people, but it's not going to be the same URI. And this ends up being kind of a big problem, if you see where I'm going with this. So the solution is cool URIs. So the idea is that each real-world object, each concept, is going to have one URI. And this is actually part of the World Wide Web Consortium's idea for how this whole thing is going to work. So going back to library land, we have all these different data sets. We have VOF, we have DBpedia that we can pull from the New York Times, linked open data. Which one of these are we supposed to use? There's really no one organization that maintains URIs and tells us which one to use. In a lot of cases, multiple URIs exist. So why would we make another one for library URIs? Why would we make a library-specific URI for something that already has a URI in some other system, in some other data store? What happens when URLs change and the URI isn't stable? And this actually happened to VOF in early 2011, and boy, were people mad about that. So something that you've been told isn't going to change. What happens when it does change? You know, and another problem that goes along with this is we can't actually match up URIs from different data stores. Anyone who's done authority work knows this. You can't just say, oh, there's a matching character string. This must be this representing, both of these things represent the same individual. Well, actually, no. You can't just make assumptions based on character strings. So, for example, you know, the VOF record for Stephen King may not be matched properly to the DBpedia entry for the Stephen King. You know, that's probably a bad example because it is matched, but it doesn't necessarily have to be matched. And for a long time, the VOF record for Stephen King was not matched properly to the open library record for Stephen King, the author that the horror fiction person author that Stephen King, well, that I grew up reading. So this work of matching URIs for people from different data sets can't be done automatically, which is kind of, you know, frankly not what we want to hear. That might lead us to questions about the data stores themselves. Thinking about quality and metadata, and I don't know how many of you have studied metadata using, when I teach metadata I use Marcia Zhang and John Kin's book called Metadata, and they define metadata quality. They talk about 3 qualities when it comes to metadata quality: completeness, correctness, and consistency. So for completeness, is there enough about the thing that it is that you're describing that somebody can understand what it is? Correctness, is the book that you're cataloging about cats inadvertently classed with the books on cows? That wouldn't be accurate. And consistency, so every book that you have that's on cats has the subject heading cats. And you don't find this kind of completeness and consistency in something, excuse me, like Wikipedia. So you have the info box contents. These are crowdsourced. They can be lacking in maybe even all 3 indicators of quality. With Wikipedia, you have different attributes that you can put for people, for example. I always bring this up because I love this so much. There's a website where you can go to look and see the different attributes that, if you want to contribute to a Wikipedia page for a person, that you can use and then supply information for. So things like achievements, or somebody won a Nobel Prize, alma mater, astrological sign, buried place, and bus size. And you know, the bus size thing, it's probably not all that important for most people, but maybe for Mae West it is. I don't know. I don't know that that would be the one thing to complete a record on her, but maybe it would. So there are all these different things, but of course we're not going to include bus size or see bus size included for every entry in Wikipedia that's a person. And Wikipedia doesn't require that content be entered. So we're looking at issues of quality, and I know that I'm only talking about DBpedia. I do realize that, but I guess I wanted to focus on DBpedia. If you've looked at the linked open data cloud, of course DBpedia is at the very center of it. So that's the one that I wanted to focus on. All right, no comments so far. I'm going to keep going. Sparkle. Sparkle, that was another thing that came up in that 3rd principle of linked data. So Sparkle, it's a recursive acronym for Sparkle Protocol and RDF Query Language. So this is how we are going to query databases that hold our linked data, or data stores. So Sparkle can be searched by machines, or technically by humans, through the endpoint to a database. If you look around at the Sparkle endpoint webpage on the semanticweb.org, both the formulation of the queries and the human-readable presentation of the results should typically be implemented by the calling software and not be done manually by human users, which sort of makes me wonder how it is that we think that all of our users are going to be able to pull together these amazing collections of resources based on querying linked data, because it's not really something that you can, as a human, that you can do very easily. And in fact, I think probably most people enjoy a visualization. So this is from a paper called Querying Heterogeneous Datasets on the Linked Data Web, Challenges, Approaches, and Trends. So if you look to the left, you'll see that keyword search is the most usable of the different kinds of searches. Sparkle is on the opposite end of that spectrum. Sparkle is the least usable in terms of human users. We can't get very specific with our searches, so the expressivity of a keyword search is relatively low. Sparkle, we can be very, very, very specific, and that's, you know, of course, what we've been told and gets us, part of what gets us so excited about linked data. But it's not really something that we can do without a background in computer science. So some of you would be able to do it. I would not. The other thing, I guess, about linked data is that you have to know what you're querying. Since it's such an expressive language, you need to know exactly what it is that you're querying, how each data set is encoded, what kind of options there are for searching, which fields have values in them. So suddenly it's not as straightforward. Your programmers have to write the Sparkle code, run it in the correct data store, and frankly, it isn't always easy to find endpoints that work. So all of this is, I guess, a little concerning. Finding the data sets also can apparently be a bit of a challenge. There's no registry that explains what data is housed in what data store, how it should be searchable, where, if the Sparkle endpoint is freely available. And I don't know about some of you, but this sort of reminded me of the whole dialog blue sheet thing. Like, it made me think, wow, wouldn't it be nice if we actually had blue sheets so that we could figure out where all these data stores are and what kind of data they have and how to search them. But apparently that doesn't currently exist. So instead of breaking down these library silos, as we've been told and we're really hoping that linked data can do, we're actually, in some respects, seeing certain silos emerging that have a particularly high barrier to use, which is obviously the opposite of what we wanted to do. So again, ending out this thesis part, this sort of main meat of what I wanted to say, the closing thoughts on part one. I'm going back to my blogger because I thought a lot of what was said was quite elegant and simple. Linked data is trying to follow the principles of the original web, but instead of focusing on the most important one, simplicity, it insists on the implementation of various relatively complex and geeky technologies of web architecture. So those are my thoughts on kind of the trouble with linked data. I was going to ask you to take the second poll to get a sense of what you think might be the biggest barrier to the implementation of linked data. And at the same time, I wanted to see if I could, see if what I'd done was spark any debate or questions. And I did have one comment, and I should have mentioned this, one comment earlier. So a librarian who's struggling to make linked data, so she understands it, but is struggling to understand how to make it work in her library, how to use it is how she words this. So that may be something that many of you are thinking, and I may have just bummed everybody else out. I did this with my students, and they were all completely bummed out by the end of it. Which is, of course, not what I wanted to do. Anyway, I'm waiting for folks to finish up here. So just about everybody voted. And it looks like a third of attendees think that the technology itself, the linked data technology, is the problem to implementing it in libraries. Another third think that it's library technology that's going to be, or is the big barrier. 20% think that it's library personnel training, and 13% of you think that it's something else, which would be interesting to know if you care to share as we go. So now we're to the soothing, I think this might be robin egg blue. Where does linked data make sense? And I don't know where this door might be from. Let's say this might be a Canadian door. That would make me happy. I enjoyed my time in Canada a lot. So where does linked data incontestably, or at least make sense? If not incontestably make sense. Linked data outside of libraries makes sense in projects that are displaying web-based content that can benefit from pulling in resources that are linked and curated from elsewhere. So websites with specific content that's trying to pull in, especially dynamically updating specified content. Freebase, which was the example that I gave earlier as a data set or data store. And some of you may realize this, for a while it was powering the Summon discovery product. So when you would go and type into Summon, and we have Summon at Ellis Library, where which is the academic library here at the University of Missouri. When I would go to Summon and start to type in something into the search box, the autocomplete for a long time was based on Freebase content, and the image that was appearing in Freebase would show up, and the autocomplete would be based on Freebase. So here, and I am seeing that one of the groups had a hard time answering my poll, which is obviously my fault, because there was difficulty in articulating a compelling use, which we will get to too. So thank you for that. So here's the Freebase page for the Library of Congress. So this is pulling, as I'm sure many of you know, directly from DBpedia, which has already been created based on Wikipedia content. And the little cog there, I actually clicked on that when I took this screenshot so that you can see that this is something that is crowdsourced. This page can be flagged to be merged with another topic, or flagged to be split into multiple topics, or deleted from the Freebase, or flagged as objectionable. So there's a potential for interaction with users who sign in to curate Freebase. Data is pulled from Wikipedia as DBpedia content, but as linked data, but also from other sources, and it populates these boxes down here. So this is pretty neat. So Freebase does this and pulls from all those different places, and Open Library does, and I don't know, lots of different projects do. It's pretty neat. So getting back to where it makes sense. So that makes sense, and that's pretty neat. I didn't know how to word this, so go with me here. Linked data makes sense when money's not an object. So this was going around recently in the Twitter sphere, this public, well, it's not a publication, this paper, I guess, think piece that these 4 authors have put out there, entitled "There's No Money in Linked Data." And their thoughts are that there's been essentially no commercial uptake of linked data, and the problem that they identify is that what are calling themselves linked open data stores aren't necessarily open, can't really be used, and licensing their content is an issue. Oh, my phone is ringing. And they actually say, talk about provocative, you can do anything you want with linked data from data stores as long as it is a proof of concept or a research paper. So no commercial adoption leads to slower uptake everywhere else, I guess including libraries. So library linked data doesn't make sense in the commercial sphere. So I guess that's not the answer to where does it make sense. But I did want to bring that in because it was such a hot topic recently. Of course, then we have folks who are bypassing linked data, perhaps because that's not where the money is. So schema.org is that project helping search engines understand the contents of web pages, understand in that semantic sense of the semantic web. So schema.org, created by Bing, Google, Yahoo, and Yandex. It's using HTML tags instead of RDF. So this kind of goes back to that, is it or is it not linked data? Purists are going to say no. But maybe it is, maybe it isn't, probably it's not. It's certainly not open because it's created by these for-profit people. But this whole thing reminds me, again, we're going back to, remember when Dublin Core came out and everyone thought, yeah, this is great. Creators of web pages are going to be able to put metadata right directly into the web page so that the search engines can find the content better. Yay, this is wonderful. And it sort of seems like, and I know I'm distilling this down very much, but schema.org is in some ways at least purporting to do similar things. It's supposed to be easy to use. It's something that anyone can learn to do. It's not complicated like linked data. And of course, as you may realize, OCLC has been encoding WorldCat records using schema.org. So that's their big project right now. And you can, I'm very proud to say I did an internship at OCLC when I was doing my PhD, and these people do not just take on things lightly. I know for a fact that they did a lot of research into how they wanted to do this, how they wanted to approach library linked data. And if schema.org was their solution, then I have to say they're a leading research group, and I know they have the brain power to give this a lot of thought. So it's compelling and interesting that this is what they chose, was the non-linked data version of linked data. Seems to me that projects that share data are really well suited to using linked data. So I know I'm going back into teacher mode and just suspension of disbelief. We'll get back to the juicy stuff in a minute. But do you remember the data, information, knowledge, wisdom hierarchy for thinking about relationships between data, information, knowledge, and wisdom? So this whole idea that information is comprised of data, and kind of data is bits and bytes and ones and zeros, and it doesn't really mean anything until I apply the knowledge that I have to it and create information from what it is. So libraries generally tend to have the mission of connecting users to information, not to data, and projects using linked data for the most part, and I'm happy to have you contribute something to the contrary maybe, or get a lively discussion going. But I'm going to say, broadly speaking, are using linked data to create links to data at this point, and they're not really bringing new meaning. So Edward Corrado is a systems librarian, and he's pretty well known in the Code for Lib community and LIDA as well. So I don't know how well he's known in ALCTS, but he and I were talking. We're working on a book together, and I told him that I was doing this presentation, and we got into a pretty interesting discussion. And I wanted to give him credit where credit was due, and not steal his ideas. So I did clear it with him that I would present this to you. He asked an awful lot of questions, and this is what one of our attendees was asking earlier. Why do I want my library's data to be published as linked data? Isn't it enough to have these big data sets and value vocabularies encoded as linked data? Why do I want to make my library data linked? Who even wants to link to my data, and what benefit is there can I possibly imagine for my patrons? Actually, I guess this is both of the comments sort of rolled into one. So I guess a lot of people are asking themselves these questions. So I wanted to get to poll 3. When is linked data in our future? And if so, when? And I don't know, I was hoping to be a little bit provocative without being completely sounding pessimistic. So if you have anything to contribute, okay, thank you, poll. Oh, wow. So currently we're not, 25% of you know, nobody's thinking it's going to be before 5 years. Okay, one group, yeah, okay. Okay, well, no other comments or questions. So, yeah, look at that. 20% of you, for the most part, say it's going to be within 2 to 5 years. Half of you say more than 5 years. And almost a third of you think another technology is going to come along and replace it before it can even be implemented. So there's a comment that Mark needs to go away before linked data happens in libraries. And I did actually, sorry, there are lots of things buzzing in my office, and I tried to turn everything off. Yeah, Mark needs to go away, and, you know, in some places, linked data has been successful. So this is, I thought this was another sort of Moroccan-looking door. I'm always happy with lilac purple sorts of colors. So an example of a project that was undertaken and that worked was the Pan-Canadian Documentary Heritage Network. So it's proof of concept, so that does kind of confirm what our linked data naysayers who had that unpublished paper were saying. It's proof of concept, yes indeed. The idea was to see if they could take what they had in terms of metadata for content and turn it into linked data without without creating new stuff. And it ended up being a success, but it was pretty small in scale, and unfortunately it's not available. So again, this was a project that I didn't think many of you would have known about, because I think it's only been presented in Canada so far. So it's something, if you're interested in seeing something that's happened, you can check it out. I don't know much about this at all, what these folks are doing, just what I've read in the Code for Lib article that they did. So they're trying to create this peer-to-peer bibframe data store, testing the usability of shared bibframe union catalog. So this is interesting. You know, when I think of library data, I think of bibliographic data. I think of bib records and authority records and such. So, so this is the most, you know, this is maybe not the most, but it's very interesting to me. And other things that I thought might have gotten by if you're mostly interested in English-speaking stuff, and I don't know why you would be interested in other things, but I happen to be, so I just thought I'd share this. You know, there are other things going on in other languages. So this French network of digital francophone resources, that's what the top is, Réseau francophone numérique, has content that has been encoded and being made available as linked data, as Sparkle endpoint and RDF, and you can export the data, what they have using OAI PMH. Of course, Europeana is using linked data, and tons of other resources are too. The linked data service that the Library of Congress is producing, you may have visited that already. And so that blurb I took from the linked data page at the Library of Congress, at the human interface to that. And then the rest of these, the Hungarian National Library, which I could not get to work, by the way, but it seemed interesting to mention, Medline, and then the SUDOC stuff from France, and I grabbed one from Germany because why not? Those were all available on the Library Linked Data Incubator group, one of their reports talking about different projects that are going on using linked data. So I mean, a lot of these are big libraries or consortia, groups of libraries banding together and trying to do this, trying to make sense of or make some project making use of linked data. So, I mean, I guess that brings us back to our libraries. Wouldn't it be cool if, you know, we all like to get so caught up in this, and I do too. This is from NNDB Mapper. So here's Barbara Walters in the middle of this map. And of course we know that underlying all of this, this really super visualization is a whole lot of structured metadata about Barbara Walters, what she's done as a professional, the work that she's done with Today in 2020 in The View, and then these events that she's attended. So these are sort of attributes. And then these people that she's had these different relationships with, mistress, romance, All of these connections that she has, I mean, this is what it is that we're going after in libraries. This is what we want to be able to do for our patrons and let them do for themselves. And if you go to NNDB Mapper, you can select this map. Somebody has pre-made this map. I wasn't able to create this on the fly, you know, and I couldn't turn around and look to Alan Greenspan and think, oh, he might be fun to make a map of him. I, as an end user, cannot do that. I can only really click on what they have available and then look at the data. But they're pulling from these various linked data sources. And it's pretty interesting. You know, we see this and then we sort of go back into our glassy-eyed, oh, this, but we have to figure out a way to make linked data work. We just have to because it's so amazing. So is it the right solution, future solution for libraries? And I think it is. I think it can be. If it's not superseded by something else that makes more sense. In the meantime, it does make sense. When the linked data practices, especially from the thesis and the antithesis part of this presentation, so we're now in the synthesis part, when the kinks from part 1 and part 2 have been worked out, but it's really, it doesn't do as much good to rush into something if the infrastructure isn't already there. I think it will make sense for libraries to get more involved with linked data when library metadata is linked data ready. So this goes back to Karen's comment. You know, we need to be rid of MARC. You know, if it's BibFrame or if it's somehow something else, and I can't conceive of what that might be right now or how that might work, but we have to have our metadata ready, and we're not there yet, as you know, preaching to the choir here. You know, and then as many of you pointed out, when library systems can handle the complex patron searches in these library linked data stores on the fly. I mean, I would like to be able to make up my own map. And this does tie back into the whole linked data problem. No, it's not libraries' fault that Sparkle works the way it does. But, you know, wouldn't it be great if we could get this worked out and we could finally have that discovery in the library catalog that we've been waiting for. You know, we've been talking about this for so long, and we keep trying, and it just seems like we're so close, and yet we're not quite there. So, in conclusion, it's not a cure-all. You know, and I know that it's it's compelling to say that library linked data is the solution, but I don't believe that it's a cure-all for library data issues. I certainly, like you, don't believe that it's going to be implemented in libraries tomorrow. It is working sort of to a limited extent in really what ends up being selected leading libraries for the most part. And I'd say it's an interesting consideration for the ways in which libraries will be headed in the future, and I truly hope that it will be the near future. So that's all I have for you. I think we have 8 minutes.
Heather?
Yes?
We did have another question that came through. I'm not sure if you would know this or anyone else in the audience. Do we know what Google is using to power its new contextual results? Is that kind of a form of linked data?
I have no idea. If anyone knows,
Okay.
I actually did see that question, and I thought, ooh, I can't contribute much to that. But if anyone else knows, I'd be happy to report what I see in the question box to everyone.
Yeah, and I have, in my own question, you know, we're kind of waiting on BibFrame. We're always kind of, seems like we're waiting on our automation systems to catch up to us. Most of us, I'm at a small library, we don't have the capability to build these things on our own. So I was very interested when people said another technology will supersede this. I mean, is it that we're going to end up so far behind that by the time the next best thing comes out, linked data won't even be interesting anymore?
Mm-hmm. You know, when I was in Morocco, they were there were a lot of card catalogs. This was in 2008, 2009. A lot of card catalogs, and there were also some access databases and things, and the National Library was really excited to be moving to Unimark. And you know, I'm such a perpetual optimist. I thought, oh, what are they doing? Why are they moving to Mark when something else is coming along right now? We all know it, and you know, kind of joke's on us. Yeah. Who knows when? I mean, good for them for moving ahead with things, because who knows when this is really going to take shape.
Well, and I would say that's even just the U.S. I mean, here in Missouri, I know there are a few libraries that have not automated it all yet, and one of them is about to jump on to the statewide catalog, and that's a huge, huge thing that this library has finally agreed to automate.
I'm pleased to hear that, actually. I'm trying to think if I know which one that might be, or if that's awkward if I ask. But yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, we were still teaching card cataloging in Morocco, which I had to learn before I could teach it. Mm-hmm. You know, and then we do end up telling students, it's the principles behind it, because you never know where you're going to end up and what technologies they're going to have. Had a big discussion yesterday about how a fork is technology. It really is, anyway. But things come and go, and yeah, I don't know. I want linked data to do it for us, but I remain unconvinced that it's on the road to doing it as things stand.
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions coming through. Oh, there is one last question there.
Yeah, there's one last one about Vivo. Yeah, I have. Their conference is going to be really. I think it's going to be. Is it going to be in St. Louis or Kansas City, Carrie?
Can you explain what? I don't know what that is. Can you explain it to the audience what Vivo is?
No, I don't. I don't know enough about it to explain it very well. No rats. I'm going to take a pass on that and get back to you. I know enough about it to know that I want to go to the conference, but I didn't submit anything to it, and I can't remember which conference it was right now, to be honest. All right, semantic web app. Thank you. Thank you for bailing me out.
And I think there might be one more question, Katie. We do see your test. If you've got another message, you can put it out there.
No problem.
Okay.
Katie.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can follow up with Heather. You know, if you have other questions. I'm just going to wrap up here. Thank you so much for this presentation, Heather. It was really interesting to kind of see what has been done, what hasn't been done, what we're waiting on in the future, or very hopeful future for linked data in libraries. I also want to thank all of our attendees for coming today. We hope you found today's session useful. You're going to receive a short online evaluation form after this session, so please take a few minutes to respond to that. Your comments always help the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee to plan its new offerings. I'd also like to thank Kira Healy and Jane Rosario for providing technical support for the webinar today, as well as Julie Reese and Vicki Grzinski in the ALCTS office. Our technical support experts always make it possible for us to present these webinars smoothly. Information about all the ALCTS Continuing Education offerings can be found on the ALCTS homepage under Online Learning. We are taking a bit of a webinar break for the summer, but please remember there are 2 online pre-conferences connected with the ALA annual conference in Chicago. And we do have web courses that run throughout the year. The next open sessions for those web courses are going to start kind of the end of July, beginning of August, depending on the session. Fundamentals of Collection and Assessment, there's only one session left that's still open, and that's in October and November. So thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we hope that you'll participate in other ALCTS Continuing Education events in the future.